Hello there. My name is Alejandra Dominguez and I work for Vancouver Island Vocational Rehabilitation Services. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Center for the opportunity of providing a platform like this to our organization. It is part of our commitment to deliver the most effective customized employment services possible. So we always try to participate in those activities to promote information dissemination in our field, in the field of customized employment. So this is a great opportunity for that. Many thanks for that. So as some of you know, VIVRS has a couple of decades of experience in specialized services for people with disabilities, but we are always in the process of learning. And this year we wanted to compile best practices on customized employment. So this presentation is very much the result of that effort and the compilation that we did in the past year. So today we're going to be sharing those results with you, and our goal is to provide, first of all, an overview of the key components of the customized employment model, especially for those of you who are not familiar with the model. And then we will present a little bit of the theory that is behind the model. And then finally we will discuss the evidence-based practices that we compiled, and this will be done through a series of case studies. And the latter we did in collaboration with Back in Motion and the Open Door Group. So I guess the obvious way to start this presentation is by defining what is customized employment. The U.S. Labor Department defines customized employment as that method that means individualizing the employment relationship between employees and employers in ways that meet the needs of both. It is based on an individualized determination of the strengths, the needs, and the interests of the person with a disability, and is also designed to meet a specific needs of the employer. Customized employment may include the development of job carving positions, self-employment, and other entrepreneurial initiatives. Customized employment also assumes the provision of reasonable accommodations and supports necessary for the individual to perform the functions once he has been placed. So we thought that in order to fully understand the concept of customized employment, it was necessary to take a step back and analyze its roots, and that would be supported employment. When we were planning this very same session, the question of what was the difference between the two of them came up, so we decided to clarify this. So first of all, supported employment is a much older approach, and one could very much say that customized employment is a variation of supported employment. So if we review the definition of supported employment, the Canadian Association for Supported Employment states that it is a person-centered approach to assisting individuals with disabilities to prepare for, obtain, and maintain integrative, competitive paid employment. It works by the job seeker receiving individualized help from a support person to achieve successful employment. The job seeker, the support person, and the employer will form a partnership to match the needs of the employer with the needs of the job seeker. So we can very much argue that all the aspects on the definition of supported employment apply to the customized employment, and that is the case because customized employment was built on supported employment. So what is the concrete difference between them? Supported employment will consist in putting the emphasis on providing training and the supports to maintain the job once the client has been placed. Whereas customized employment will focus on placing the individual based on her competencies and a specific skill set that many times are not obvious, and we will have to work with the client to discover those set of skills and to match them with the unmet needs of the employer. So this is a piece that will distinguish customized employment from supported employment, the carving, the creation of a new job. So let's review what's behind the theory of customized employment. The model is based in two other frameworks. The first one is the evidence-based practice model, which is an interdisciplinary model that started to be used in medicine in the 50s, as well as in psychology and education, and in more recent times in vocational rehabilitation. And this model entails practitioners like us posing important questions and making our decisions regarding the provision of our service based on research, specifically on empirical studies. The other framework in which customized employment is based on is the individualized placement and support model of supported employment, as I mentioned before. This is itself a systematic, evidence-based approach to helping people with severe disabilities to achieve competitive employment. So this model is based in 8 principles, and we thought it was important to mention those because they are very well embedded in customized employment, and you will be able to recognize the principles all through the, when we talk about the best practices. So the first principle is client choice, meaning that everybody with a significant disability who is willing to participate in this process will be eligible for it. So zero exclusion policy. Competitive employment, meaning that job specialists will have to concentrate on getting regular jobs for the client and not jobs that are designed for people with disabilities. The integration of a professional team, meaning that many times the job specialist will have to work with other specialists such as psychologists or professional assessors on behalf of the client. Attention to client preferences, meaning that the job search needs to be based on what the client really wants. Work incentive planning, meaning that we need to teach our client how accessing employment could affect other disability benefits that he already is receiving. Rapid job search, the eminent need for job development, meaning that we will have to be the connection, the employment specialist will have to be the connection between our client and the employer. And finally, the individualized supports that our client will require to perform the job. So if you wonder why we use the U.S. Department definition the U.S. Department of Labor definition, it's because they were the ones who launched the oldest and one of the most successful vocational rehabilitation programs supporting the employment of people with disabilities, including both supported employment and customized employment. In addition, the bulk of the research in those mainstream frameworks that we just reviewed has also been conducted in the U.S., and there is evidence that all those models have been replicated internationally, including here in Canada. And especially in the case of Canada and more specifically BC, the government of BC since the 80s has also followed the steps of the U.S. as benchmarks to support people with disabilities. So it's not surprised that in 2007, the Ministry of Social Development and CLBC launched the Customized Employment Demonstration Project. This project went on between 2008 and 2012, and during that period, service providers offered customized employment services to 285 individuals, and VIVRS was one of them. The results of that project were crucial for the design of the current employment services that we now know as the ones under the umbrella of the employment program of British Columbia, including the customized employment development. So this is the model that they used during that demonstration project. This is called the Griffin-Hamitz Associate approach to customized employment. They are a U.S. consultancy firm who have become leaders in the evolution of customized employment training and technical consultation, and their model is very, very well summarized in this chart. So if you take a look at the outer sections of the diagram, the discovering personal genius, job development, work-site support, and career sustainability, they very well mirror the exact stages of the customized employment model within the employment program of BC. So the discovery, job placement, job coaching, and job retention. And this is the model that we use here at VIVRS. For us, customized employment is our most intensive, personalized, and flexible approach to job search that we use with our clients. And we use these very same stages. The discovery that concludes with the creation of an employment profile and a planning meeting, the job development, including the job carving piece, the job coaching, and the job retention. So the discovery. The discovery is a community-based experience that takes place mostly out of the office, and it will help us to better understand the client's set of skills and his passions. So some of the activities that we do when we do the discovery with clients are a home visit, visits around the neighborhood. We try to share activities that are familiar to the client, and also we try to challenge him to do other unfamiliar activities. And also we make attempts to connect with individuals that are close to him, that are meaningful and then that can bring some perspectives into the assessment. And finally, we summarized all the information into the employment profile, and we carry out a collaborative meeting with whoever was able to participate in the assessment. The job carving piece is when we match the client with the employer who has hopefully exactly the corresponding employment need, and this will require intensive negotiation where we need to provide ways to the employer to enhance their business. And many times this will require that we restructure a job or that we create a completely new one. Job coaching. This is where we will go into the work site to assist the client in learning the job, and we will create the necessary supports. And finally, the job retention stage is when we will provide the ongoing follow-up to ensure that the client is attached to the workplace in the long term, and that we can ensure also that the necessary supports remain in place. So who are our clients in customized employment? Our clients are individuals who have never been employed, or they have very limited labor market attachment, and it's very unlikely that they will attain it independently or through a traditional job search process. These could be people who have difficulty maintaining employment or require on-site support to learn the job, or they may be individuals who may not identify their disability as the main issue for their inability to secure employment. So at VIVRS, we offer customized employment services to all individuals with significant disabilities or multiple barriers to employment, including people with developmental disabilities, learning disabilities, mental disabilities, physical disabilities. So following, there is a summary of the best practices that we identified through literature review and also through our own practices. We emphasize those that we identified from CLBC demonstration project that as well encompass the practice of a few of BC service providers, and also best practices from the Office of Disability Employment Policy and through different of its contracted agencies. So here's the summary of the best practices that we identified and that we used. We identified 6 categories. The first category is best practices during intake. We determined that as a best practice we needed to make effective referrals and accurate referrals to ensure that our clients complete the program. And this can be accomplished by the case manager. The referring case manager must be able to know the service very well, so he can explain the service in detail and make sure that the client understands and is willing to participate. The case manager should make an emphasis on the level of commitment that these specialized services may entail, because this is not the regular one-on-one appointment at the office. This requires a much more significant commitment. So sometimes we, as a practice, a good practice, we need to meet with the individual more than once to identify whether customized employment is the right option for the client before beginning discovery. The second good practice is that we need to evaluate a series of indicators. They are not requirements. They are just indicators that will help us to assess whether the client will be able to complete the program. So we assess whether they are in place already, or if there are some substitutes for it, or if the client has the potential to obtain them. So the indicators are that the client has stable housing, that he has connection to appropriate community supports, that his physical and mental health are in reasonable stable condition, that the client is able to navigate the public transportation, or that there is a substitute for that, for example, a worker or a family support, and that the client is able to function independently after the initial job coaching is completed. Best practices in discovery. We determined that discovery is the foundation of the customized employment process, but that also needs to be seen as a planning tool. So not only it will summarize all the findings from the assessment, but it is imperative that we are able to identify next steps already, so we can start the job development piece as soon as possible. For example, having a list of potential employers within the employment profile. There is a substantial need for exploratory time for discovery. So we will need to spend, I would say, on average 15 to 20 hours to understand the job seeker's lifestyle, his preferences, his experiences, his needs. This is a time that it will help us to identify the complexities that this person can bring into the potential employment relationship. Therefore, we should be able to plan all the activities of the discovery. They must have a well-defined purpose. The discovery is also more useful when the job seeker is willing to select friends and family and colleagues to participate with us in this phase, because they can bring and share their perspective on the client, and eventually or potentially can become also connections to employment opportunities. The discovery meetings should take place mostly out of the office, with one of the first meetings being at the client's home. And at the home, this is a place that will help us to understand the complexity of that person's life. We will be able to understand what this client goes through day to day, how they do things like preparing meals, enjoying their hobbies, or basic information on how they organize their day-to-day activities. And then the rest of the discovery will be doing community activities. Since most of the jobs are performed within the community, it is necessary that we go out into the community with the job seeker. For example, we will visit a place that is part of the regular daily routine of the client that can give us some information on responses of how he acts on that setting. For example, what's his pace, how does he dress, what's the social interaction. Another key component of the discovery will be the skills and the task assessment, and these will take place while doing activities. So we need to aim for providing opportunities for the individual to demonstrate what they can do and what they are interested in learning more. So it's not about providing questionnaires or anything, it's just giving the opportunity for them to demonstrate what they can do to us. A very important practice within the discovery is the organization of short work experiences. This is one of our most successful practices, and many times this will be crucial for the final placement of the client. There's also the need to pay attention all through the process. We need to pay attention to client preferences. And so in summary, we need to be able to summarize in the employment profile those job-related tasks, personal traits that are relevant to the job search, and also the necessary supports and accommodations that the client will need. And finally, we will have to establish the 3 vocational themes that are the areas of work that the client is interested in. Best practices in job development. Because employment takes place in an integrated community setting, our objective must be to find jobs that are regular jobs and with people without disabilities. Also, we have another very successful practice that we have implemented a series of workshops like a job club, while people who are in customized employment are waiting to be placed. We send them to participate in these workshops so they can keep their motivation. And finally, working in team with a group of specialists using their strengths to share the information about job leads and provide the clients with the sense that they are having a team working for them and not just one person. In terms of job carving, the individual, the job seeker, we need to be able, as a specialist, to be able to present the individual, not the program. So for that, we need to know our client very well. For example, we can use representational portfolios when possible. Another approach is to have a proposal that highlight the job seeker's customized contribution. And there are a few approaches in which we can offer that to the employer. Some of these approaches are that we can offer to conduct a needs analysis for the employer at no cost. or to offer the employer to collaborate together with him. So the idea is that we provide, like we make the employer feel like we are providing services for him as well as we are doing for our client. Then best practices for job coaching. We determined as a best practice we needed to assist our client in reporting benefits and monitoring the impact of employment if he accesses regular employment, what are the impact that this will have on benefits that he's already receiving. Another good practice is to maintain close contact with the employer during the training period to resolve any problems and be ready to renegotiate if it's necessary. And renegotiation can include, it can be regarding tasks or additional responsibilities or wages. And finally, negotiation and establishment of natural supports. Best practices in job retention. So a good practice in job retention is that we need to be there to support problem resolution between the employer and the employee. A very important aspect is that we many times we concentrate in our client learning the job, but we also need to be teaching him about organizational culture and policies. One aspect of ensuring post-hire success is seeking continuous feedback from the employer and being there just for the employer. So, for example, in supporting him to developing the tools to support our client. And finally, the last category on best practices that we were able to identify was the HR practices for our organization to ensure that the employment specialists that are providing customized employment services have the right competencies. And for that, we determined that 3 things were necessary. The first one is to make an attempt to hire staff with HR and business background who have an understanding of business practices and hopefully connections with the local community. To spend considerable amount of time training and identifying training opportunities for the staff that is delivering customized employment services. And finally, as much as possible, aiming for smaller caseloads and having a team approach to service delivery with one main point of contact for the individual receiving services. So at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation to Darcy, who is going to review the first case study.
Thanks very much, Alejandra. First, just to let you know, Vancouver Island Vocational Rehabilitation Services has delivered customized employment services on the island for more than 25 years. Our agency's founder, Ingrid Tanasicek, emphasizes delivery of services from a vocational rehabilitation perspective that is client-centered and offers individualized employment planning based on clients' strengths and interests. We have been delivering customized employment services on Vancouver Island since 2007, with previous experience delivering these services through the CLVC demonstration project and the Individualized Employment Services contract. Our CES services are delivered by a specialized and multidisciplinary team. All of our team members have previous experience delivering employment services to individuals with multiple barriers, and some of them have previous experience delivering customized employment services in other contracts. We noticed that CES specialists tend to be out-of-the-box thinkers, and they're also people who are skilled at relationship development, both relationships with clients and relationships with employers. We've had multiple service successes with individuals with complex needs that have difficulty articulating their skills and lack direct experience within the paid labor market. We've delivered the service to individuals with developmental delays, learning disabilities, neurological disorders, mental health disorders, trauma due to experiences with violence, social anxiety, and individuals with multiple episodes of homelessness. So we'll move into our case study now, and what we've done is we've highlighted the best practices on the screen as I read through the case study. So our client C is a 32-year-old female. She walked through the doors of a local employment services center. During the registration process, C identified that she was a person with a disability, and she further identified that her disability was a main barrier to employment. She was referred to VIVRS because we are the subcontracted service provider who works with individuals with barriers to employment associated with disability. C has had 2 assessment appointments with a case manager at VIVRS. During these assessments, C identified that she had been diagnosed with OCD, body dysmorphia, and anxiety disorder. C told the case manager she felt unable to initiate social contacts with other individuals. Her only connection were with family and support workers. In fact, in her efforts to avoid any other social contact, C would regularly walk 2 to 3 hours to appointment rather than try and use public transportation. Although C was a high school graduate, she had never sought any employment once she left school. Her only paid working experience was childcare for family friends. During these intake assessments, C identified that her living situation was stable and she was connected to supports for her mental health. The initial case manager explained the process of customized employment services to C, and together they identified that it would be a best fit for her to be able to identify her employable skills and meet the needs of an employer. C was referred to the CES team and assigned to a specialist who followed her progress throughout the program. C and her CES specialist began the process of discovery. Discovery appointments were out of the office and focused on participating in the community that C wanted to become employed in. C was told at the outset of the process she would be asked to participate in activities that were both familiar and unfamiliar to her. She was also informed that she would be challenged to participate in activities that took place in familiar and unfamiliar locations. C was engaged in the community in a variety of ways. The first step the CES specialist took was to do a home visit. The home visit assisted C and the CES specialist to understand what her daily routines were and her relationship networks. The specialist observed that C had a very orderly and tidy home. She rents her own suite in the home of her aunt and uncle. She identified that photography was her hobby and shared some of her photos with the specialist. Additionally, she provided insight into her family life during the visit. The specialist was able to assess C's skills at cleaning and organizing during this visit. Additionally, the CES specialist was able to observe that there were stores and businesses within bus riding distance of C's home. When C and the specialist discussed this, C identified that she visited them infrequently due to her inability to ride the bus. The visit to C's home and neighborhood provided a great deal of additional information as to how C's anxieties impacted her day-to-day life. The CES specialist determined that C would need to be employed in a small team environment where she would not have to initiate or participate in ongoing social interactions. For additional insight and assessment, C and her CES specialist went to a doctor's appointment. This is a task that C is familiar with in an environment that is familiar to her. At the appointment, the CES specialist wanted to observe how C interacted in professional relationships and also if C could communicate her needs to her doctor and successfully advocate for herself. C struggled to fully articulate her needs, however her anxiety diminished after her needs had been communicated and were understood by her doctor. The CES specialist determined that C would need initial support on the job site, communicating her needs to her employer, and learning the needs of the employer, but would likely be able to maintain this relationship once these initial needs were established and understood. As a novel activity, the CES specialist and C went to meet with an employer at a pet store to determine if a work experience placement would be feasible with the company. At the meeting, the CES specialist observed that although C was not highly communicative, she was able to present appropriately and respond to questions. Through this interaction, the CM identified that C was able to function through her anxiety with supports in a focused situation. The CES specialist and C felt a work placement in a pet store would be a good learning experience for C and would also provide an opportunity for the specialist to observe C's behavior on the job site. A written agreement with a clear objective was negotiated and signed by C, the specialist, and the employer. The work experience consisted of 2 shifts spanning over a 2-week period, with tasks escalating in complexity. During the work placement, the specialist observed that C in a professional setting. She behaved appropriately, and the specialist observed she had excellent stamina, memory, physical dexterity, and was able to communicate about her tasks when it was required. At the close of the first day of the work experience, the specialist and C and the employer had an opportunity to debrief. The employer was able to provide some feedback. Because she had clear tasks and expectations, C responded well in this environment and the feedback was positive. C and the CES specialist returned the following week for an additional shift. C demonstrated good retention of the learning from the previous shift. She excelled in areas like facing shelves, detailed cleaning, and organizing. The CES specialist observed a lessening of her usual anxiety as she was occupied with her task. At the final feedback session with the employer and the CES specialist, the employer identified that she observed how willing C was to do any task that she was asked to perform. It was identified that the support of the specialist on site was an instrumental part of the learning process. C was able to lower her anxiety because she felt supported and therefore was able to focus on processing information. The clarity of direction and routine in this environment also made it possible for C to be successful in this placement. A second work experience placement was arranged in a private home. The work trial gave the opportunity for the CES specialist to observe how C responded to a new employer and more informal environment. The CES specialist observed the differences in this environment. A lack of clear standards and well-developed routines were challenging for C. Her anxiety was high because she did not have any clear expectations, and so she became obsessive about repetitive cleaning of objects. C was unable to make decisions in this environment and could not manage her time or judge effectively when tasks were completed. This led to valuable information that informed the employment profile. At the close of discovery, the CES specialist and C collaboratively produced an employment profile with 3 realistic themes identified. Using the learning from the discovery activities, the CES specialist and C identified her skills and strengths and areas where she may require support. For example, the specialist identified that C struggled with communication, but when she was in an environment where she felt comfortable and she was able to listen and follow verbal directions. If she did not feel safe emotionally, she became anxious and could not clearly follow directions. The specialist identified through her interactions with C that she would need to be on site to support C with the developing of a trusting relationship with her coworkers. With this type of support, the specialist and C agreed that she could be successful in a small working environment with some formal structures and a reasonably static staff. 3 vocational themes were identified, but C was particularly interested in a carved position that would utilize her cleaning and organizing skills. The specialist and C agreed that she had the stamina and skills for this type of position, and this became the initial focus for the job negotiation phase. The specialist connected with several janitorial companies and home cleaners. The tasks at some of these environments did not seem to fit with C's identified needs. The CES specialist then arranged a company tour and information interview for herself at a silk screening company. While on tour, the specialist observed and had the opportunity to speak with the general manager of the company. In this company, there were graphic artists who were expected to clean their silk screens after each use. The employer identified that this was a tedious but important task. He also identified that many of the graphic artists did not like this portion of the job. The CES specialist identified that this was a perfect opportunity for C. This was a potential job carve that had clear structure to it, and it was a task that required meticulous attention to detail and thorough cleaning skills. The task of cleaning the screens would be repetitive, and C would easily be able to identify when her task was complete. The environment was a small manufacturing setting with limited personal interactions and no public interactions. The CES specialist returned to the employer and made a business case for hiring C to be a part-time cleaner who would support the work of the graphic artist by cleaning the screens. The investment of these part-time hours would present an opportunity for the graphic artist to increase their productivity and potentially boost sales. During this process, C was presented as the only candidate and a job was carved that met her needs and the needs of the employer. The negotiation process took 4 meetings where a job was carved, a training plan was made, and C was introduced to the employer and her coworkers. During this process, the CES specialist strengthened the relationship with the employer by explaining her role and her ability to support the employer through the training process and provide ongoing follow-up. The CES specialist spent time with C on the job. Although it was clear she had no challenges with getting there or completing the job, it was important for C and the CES specialist to develop on-site anxiety management strategies and establish clear workplace routines to lower anxiety on the job. After attending full shifts with C, the specialist implemented strategies so that C would feel confident on the job independently. The CES specialist continued to meet with her weekly at the job site to assist with developing and maintaining strategies for managing her anxiety, but she no longer attended shifts for their entirety. The CES specialist remained connected with C's employer and direct supervisors. At the close of each job coaching session, the CES specialist made a point of connecting with the employer to maintain relationship and to identify any potential issues. Additionally, the CES specialist helped foster a supportive relationship between C and key employees. These employees have become natural supports for C, providing necessary feedback and reassurance for her. This support quells C's anxieties and allows her to be effective on the job site. Once the natural supports were in place, the CES specialist no longer attended each shift. C and the specialist regularly connected to make sure the job was going well, and C identified it was. C now works 3 days per week, 4 hours per shift. The business is in an area where C can walk to. The job is carved for her. It's easy for C to measure the completeness of her task, which was identified as the need on the employment profile to reduce OCD tendencies and anxieties. C has one task that is performed repetitively. The atmosphere is relaxed and coworkers are kind and supportive. She is doing well on the job and happy to be working, and the fact that she is employed has given her hope that her life can become happier and healthier. Additionally, the CES specialist has maintained ongoing contact with the employer. The employer has continually identified that C is meeting and exceeding his expectations. The specialist has a role to ensure that C continues to do that, and if for some reasons things change, the specialist is connected and available to the employer and the individual. Additionally, the specialist has worked with the employer so that he understands the importance of maintaining the structure of this carved job. The employer has agreed not to make any changes to the position without consulting with the CES specialist, and the employer understands that the specialist is available to him at any time and feels supported by the agency. C has stated that she feels hopeful for the future and is grateful for the opportunity to work. She stated that she feels like she can have a life. She's reconnected with her photography group, and there's been a gradual increase in her ability to function outside the home and feel comfortable in doing so. CES provided essential support for this client, and this client has reported that it has been life-changing for her. Thank you very much.